I was 44, working myself to death as an ICU nurse 70 hours a week, and still couldn't pay my mortgage without panic. Then one night, an elderly patient in room 7 looked at me with these knowing eyes and asked a question so simple, so devastating, that I couldn't sleep for days. What he said in that quiet hospital room changed everything. My career, my finances, my entire future. But here's what terrified me most. I almost didn't listen. I almost dismissed him like I dismissed every other piece of advice, convinced that working harder was my only option. Thank God I didn't, because 2 years later, my life looks nothing like it did that night. And it all started with one question that broke me wide open. Sarah Bennett's hands trembled as she inserted the IV line into her patient's arm. 44 years old, and her fingers had never shaken like this before. Not in 22 years of nursing. "Are you okay there, Sarah?" The patient, a kind-faced woman recovering from gallbladder surgery, looked more concerned about Sarah than herself. "Just fine, Mrs. Patterson. Just a long shift." Sarah forced a smile, the same smile she'd perfected over 2 decades at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. The smile that said everything was under control, even when it wasn't. It was 3 in the morning on a Tuesday, and Sarah was halfway through her 3rd double shift this week. The fluorescent lights of the ICU hummed overhead, mixing with the steady beep of heart monitors and the whoosh of ventilators. Outside the windows, Jackson slept under a blanket of humidity that even October couldn't shake off. Her phone buzzed in her scrubs pocket. She already knew what it was, another mortgage payment reminder. The little house on Ridgewood Road, the one she'd fought so hard to keep after the divorce, was eating her alive. $2,300 a month, plus utilities, plus the roof that desperately needed replacing, plus the property taxes that seemed to climb higher every year. Sarah finished with Mrs. Patterson and retreated to the nurse's station, collapsing into the worn office chair that squeaked every time she moved. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but she drank it anyway. Cold hospital coffee was still coffee. "Oh, you look like death warmed over," said Marcus, her favorite colleague, sliding a fresh cup across the desk. Marcus was 28, sharp as a tack, and always seemed to have energy even at 3 in the morning. "That's your 3rd double this week, Sarah. You're gonna kill yourself." Bills don't pay themselves. Sarah wrapped her hands around the warm cup, grateful for something hot that didn't taste like it had been sitting since yesterday's day shift. "Yeah, but there's got to be another way. My cousin Tamika, she started doing some kind of online thing. Made enough to quit her 2nd job at—" "I'm too old to learn computers, Marcus." Sarah cut him off gently. She'd heard it all before. Cryptocurrency, drop shipping, multi-level marketing schemes disguised as girl boss empowerment. At 44, she was too tired and too broke to gamble what little she had left. Marcus shrugged and wandered off to check on his patients. Sarah pulled up her bank account on her phone, a masochistic habit she'd developed over the past year. Checking account, $847. Savings account, $1,203. Credit card debt, $8,450. The math was simple and terrifying. She was drowning in slow motion. Her daughter Riley had called yesterday, excited about some concert in Nashville she wanted to attend with her college friends. Sarah had made an excuse about why she couldn't send money, something about an unexpected car repair that wasn't entirely a lie. The check engine light had been on for 3 weeks, and she was just pretending it wasn't there. Riley was 22, finishing her senior year at Ole Miss, working part-time at a boutique in Oxford, and somehow managing to have a social life. Sarah couldn't remember the last time she'd done something just for fun. Even her days off were spent sleeping, doing laundry and worrying about money. The automatic doors at the end of the ICU wing whooshed open. Sarah looked up to see Dr. Patel doing rounds, early as usual. He was probably the only person in the building who looked more exhausted than she did. "Sarah, can you come with me to check on Mr. Hayes in room 7? Sarah pushed herself up from the chair, her knees protesting. When had she gotten old? It seemed like yesterday she was Riley's age, full of energy and dreams, convinced that working hard was all it took to get ahead in life. Room 7 was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. Walter Hayes, 78 years old, had been admitted 3 days ago with pneumonia. He was improving steadily, which meant he'd probably be discharged soon. Sarah liked Mr. Hayes. He had kind eyes and a dry sense of humor that reminded her of her late father. Blood pressure's good. Oxygen saturation at 97%, Dr. Patel murmured, checking the monitors. Keep up the antibiotics. He should be out of here by Thursday. After Dr. Patel left, Sarah busied herself checking Mr. Hayes's IV line and adjusting his pillows. His eyes were open, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "You work too much," he said suddenly, his voice raspy but clear. Sarah laughed softly. "Everybody works too much these days, Mr. Hayes." "No." He shook his head slightly. "I mean you work too much. I've been watching you these past few days. You're always here. Different shifts, different times. When do you sleep?" "When I can." Sarah tried to keep her tone light, but something in his gaze made her defenses crack just a little. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was 3 in the morning. Hospitals short-staffed. Extra shifts mean extra money. "How old are you?" 44. "And how long you planning to keep this up?" Sarah paused in adjusting his blanket. "As long as I need to, I suppose." "And when will that be? When you're 50? 60? When you drop dead of a heart attack in this very hallway?" There was no judgment in his voice, just genuine curiosity. It unsettled her more than criticism would have. "I've got bills, Mr. Hayes. A mortgage. My daughter's in college. This is just how life is." "Is it, though?" He shifted slightly in the bed, wincing a little. "I used to be a financial advisor before I retired. Worked with folks all over Mississippi. You know what I learned?" Sarah didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. "I learned that the people working the hardest usually end up with the least, and the people working the smartest end up with the most. There's a difference." "That's easy to say when you're already retired and comfortable," Walter chuckled, a dry sound that turned into a small cough. "You think I started comfortable? I grew up in a shotgun house in the Delta, picking cotton summers to help my mama make ends meet. I know about working hard, young lady, but I also learned that there's only so many hours in a day you can trade for dollars. Eventually you run out of hours." Sarah felt something twist in her chest. She thought about her bank account, about the mortgage payment due in 12 days, about the way her back ached and her feet throbbed and her eyes burned. "So, what's the alternative?" Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "You make your money work for you instead of you working for it, but that's a conversation for when I'm not hooked up to all these machines and you're not dead on your feet." An alarm beeped from the hallway. Someone's IV pump. Sarah excused herself, grateful for the interruption. Walter Hayes's words followed her down the corridor, though, circling in her tired mind like birds looking for a place to land. Make your money work for you. The thought would have been funny if it weren't so absurd. What money? The negative balance in her checking account, the credit card debt that grew faster than she could pay it down. By the time her shift ended at 7 in the morning, Sarah's feet felt like concrete blocks, and her vision had gone slightly fuzzy around the edges. She clocked out, waved goodbye to the incoming day shift, and walked out into the parking lot. The October sun was already climbing over Jackson, promising another warm day. Sarah's 12-year-old Honda Civic sat in its usual spot, the check engine light glowing accusingly when she turned the key. The car coughed to life, and Sarah pointed it toward Ridgewood Road. Her house looked smaller every time she came home. Once upon a time it had felt like a victory, her very own piece of the American dream. Now it just felt like an anchor, dragging her down to the bottom of some dark financial ocean. Inside, the house was quiet and cool. Sarah dropped her purse on the kitchen counter, kicked off her shoes and stood in the middle of her living room, looking around at the furniture she'd bought at Furniture Mart when she and David were still married, at the framed photos of Riley graduating high school, at the stack of medical journals she never had time to read. She thought about Walter Hayes's question, "How long you planning to keep this up?" Sarah didn't have an answer. She only knew that she couldn't keep going like this. Something had to change. She just had no idea what. Sarah slept for 4 hours, woke up disoriented, and realized she had to be back at the hospital by 7 that evening. Another night shift. Her body had stopped knowing what day it was anymore. She made coffee in the same pot she'd had since 2008, the one that made concerning gurgling sounds. but still worked well enough. While it brewed, she opened her laptop at the kitchen table, a hand-me-down from Riley that was slow but functional. Walter Hayes's words kept nagging at her. "Make your money work for you." She typed it into Google, feeling slightly ridiculous. The search results were overwhelming. Passive income strategies, real estate investing, dividend stocks, cryptocurrency. Everything seemed to require either money she didn't have or technical knowledge she didn't possess. Sarah closed the laptop and rubbed her eyes. Her phone rang. It was her mother calling from Biloxi. "Hey, Mama." "Sarah Elizabeth, you sound exhausted. Are you eating?" "Yes, Mama, I'm eating," Sarah lied smoothly. She'd had hospital cafeteria food at midnight, and nothing since. "Riley called me yesterday, said you couldn't help with that concert she wanted to go to." Sarah felt a familiar stab of guilt. "Things are just tight right now. The car needs work and—" "Baby, you can't keep doing this to yourself, working yourself into the ground. Your daddy, God rest him, he worked himself sick at the plant for 30 years, and what did we have to show for it? You're following right in his footsteps." "What else am I supposed to do, Mama? The bills don't stop coming." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Sarah could picture her mother in the small apartment in Biloxi, probably sitting at her own kitchen table with her own coffee, worry lines deep around her eyes. "I don't know, baby. I wish I did. But I know this isn't sustainable. You're 44, not 24. Your body won't take this forever." After they hung up, Sarah sat in the quiet kitchen, listening to the refrigerator hum and the neighbor's dog bark at something in the yard. Her mother was right. Everyone was right. But being right didn't put money in the bank. She opened the laptop again, this time searching more specifically. Financial advice, Jackson, Mississippi. Among the results was a notice for a free financial literacy workshop at the Eudora Welty Library in Fondren, scheduled for that Saturday morning. "Building Wealth on a Working-Class Income," read the title. The instructor was someone named Thomas Chen, a local financial advisor who volunteered his time teaching basic investing principles. Sarah stared at the screen. Saturday was supposed to be her day off, her only day off this week. She'd planned to sleep, do laundry, maybe finally deal with the stack of medical bills on her counter, but something made her click the registration button. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was Walter Hayes's knowing eyes. Maybe it was just too many years of being tired. "One workshop," she said aloud to the empty kitchen. "Can't hurt." That evening, Sarah arrived at the hospital early. She'd learned that showing up 15 minutes before her shift started meant she could actually sit down and breathe for a moment before diving in. Marcus was already there, looking fresh and energetic, despite it being 7 in the evening. "You figure out that money thing yet?" he asked, grinning. "I'm working on it," Sarah said, and was surprised to find she meant it. The shift started like any other. Medication rounds, vital checks, charting. Room 7 had a new patient. Walter Hayes had been moved to a regular floor that afternoon, which meant he was improving. Sarah felt oddly disappointed. She'd wanted to ask him more questions, though she wasn't sure exactly what. Around 9 o'clock, during a rare quiet moment, Sarah found herself in the break room with Keisha, one of the older nurses who'd been at the hospital even longer than Sarah. "You doing okay, girl?" Keisha asked, heating up leftover gumbo in the microwave. The smell made Sarah's stomach rumble. "You've been running yourself ragged." "Just trying to keep my head above water." Keisha nodded knowingly. She was 52, a grandmother of 3, and had the kind of no-nonsense wisdom that came from surviving decades of hard living. "I hear that. Been there myself, still am there most days. How do you manage it?" "Barely." Keisha laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "I got my house paid off, thank the Lord. Took me 25 years, but it's mine, that helps. But retirement, forget about it. I'll probably die on this floor." The microwave beeped. Keisha pulled out her gumbo and sat down across from Sarah. "You know what kills me?" Keisha stirred her food slowly. "I see these young doctors come through here, fresh out of medical school, drowning in student debt. But you know what they all got? Financial advisors, investment portfolios, real estate. They're thinking about money in ways we never learned, because they make 3 times what we make. Sure, but that ain't the only difference. They got taught how money works, We got taught how to work hard and hope for the best. Sarah thought about Walter Hayes, about her father, who'd worked at the Nissan plant in Canton until his heart gave out at 62, about her own bank account with its pitiful balance. I registered for a financial workshop on Saturday, Sarah heard herself say. At the library in Fondren. Keisha's eyebrows rose. Look at you, that's good, Sarah, real good. What kind of workshop? Building wealth on a working-class income, apparently. Well, if you learn anything useful, you better share it with me. Keisha pointed her spoon at Sarah with mock seriousness. We working-class folks got to stick together. The rest of the shift passed in the usual blur of activity. At 3 in the morning during her rounds, Sarah found herself on the medical floor, and on impulse she checked the patient board. Walter Hayes, room 412. She shouldn't. It wasn't her floor, wasn't her patient. But her feet carried her down the hallway anyway. The door to 412 was slightly ajar. Sarah knocked softly and poked her head in. Walter was awake, reading a John Grisham novel by the dim light over his bed. Nurse Bennett, he said, looking up with those sharp eyes. Come to check on me. Just passing by, wanted to see how you were doing. Better, they're springing me tomorrow. My daughter's driving up from Hattiesburg to collect me. Sarah stepped into the room, feeling oddly nervous. Mr. Hayes, what you said the other night, about making money work for you instead of working for it. Can you explain what you meant? Walter set down his book and studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that held decades of hard-won knowledge. Are you ready to listen now? I don't know, maybe. That's honest, at least. He gestured to the chair beside his bed. Sit down for a minute. You got time? Sarah glanced at her watch. She had maybe 10 minutes before she needed to be back on her floor. A little. That'll do for now. Walter folded his hands across his stomach. Tell me about your money situation. Not the details, just the general picture. You got a mortgage? Yes. $2,300 a month. How much you bring home after taxes? Sarah felt her cheeks flush. Around $3,800 before I pick up extra shifts. So your mortgage is eating more than half your take-home pay. That's your first problem right there. The bank's getting rich off you while you're getting poor. I needed somewhere to live after the divorce. I couldn't afford much else in a decent neighborhood. I'm not criticizing you, understand? I'm just diagnosing the problem. Now you got any other income besides your nursing salary? No. Any investments? Retirement accounts? A 401k through the hospital. I stopped contributing last year when things got tight. Walter nodded slowly, and Sarah couldn't tell if he was disappointed or if this was exactly what he'd expected. Here's the thing nobody teaches folks like us, he said. The rich don't work for money. They make money work for them. You know how? Investments? That's part of it. But the real secret is assets versus liabilities. Your house, the way you're using it right now, is a liability. It takes money out of your pocket every month, but if you were smart about it, you could turn it into an asset, something that puts money in your pocket. Sarah frowned. How? It's just a house. You got extra bedrooms? One, Riley's old room. She lives in Oxford now. Could you rent it out? The question landed like a physical thing. Sarah opened her mouth, then closed it. The idea had never even occurred to her. I don't know, I've never thought about that. Most people don't, but that extra bedroom could bring in $500–600 a month, maybe more. That's $6,000 a year, just sitting there empty while you work yourself to death picking up double shifts. Sarah's mind raced. Riley's room had been empty for 2 years. It had become a storage space for boxes and old furniture. But a stranger in her house. Someone she didn't know using her kitchen, her bathroom. I don't know if I could... I'm not telling you what to do, Walter interrupted gently. I'm just showing you there's options you haven't considered. That's just one example. There's dozens of ways to make your money work harder so you don't have to. An alarm went off somewhere down the hall. Sarah stood up, knowing she needed to get back. That workshop you're going to on Saturday, Walter said as she reached the door. That's a good start, but the real education comes from doing, not just listening. Remember that. How did you know about the workshop? Walter tapped his temple. I know Tom Chen, good man. Tell him Walter Hayes sent you, he'll take good care of you. Sarah walked back to her floor with Walter's words echoing in her mind. rent out Riley's room, turn her house from a liability into an asset. That sounded almost too simple, which probably meant it was harder than it sounded. But for the first time in months, maybe years, Sarah felt something besides exhaustion and dread. It was small and fragile, barely there at all. It might have been hope. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of October sunshine that made Mississippi feel almost forgiving. Sarah woke up at 9, the latest she'd slept in months, and for a brief, disorienting moment she forgot about the mortgage, the bills, the constant gnawing anxiety. Then reality crashed back in, but somehow it felt slightly less crushing than usual. The workshop started at 11 at the Eudora Welty Library in Fondren. Sarah hadn't been to Fondren in years. It used to be run down, but from what she'd heard, it had become one of Jackson's trendiest neighborhoods. Art galleries, coffee shops, the kind of place where young professionals spent their Saturday mornings. She felt out of place before she even arrived. The library was beautiful, all tall windows and modern architecture mixed with historic charm. Sarah found the meeting room on the second floor, expecting maybe 10 or 15 people. Instead, she walked into a room packed with at least 50 folks. Young couples, single mothers, older men in work clothes, a whole cross-section of Jackson trying to figure out how to get ahead. "First time?" asked a woman about Sarah's age, gesturing to an empty chair beside her. "That obvious? You got that deer-in-headlights look. I'm Patricia." She had kind eyes and wore scrubs under her jacket. "ICU nurse at Baptist." "Sarah, ICU at UMMC." "Well, look at that. We're trauma twins." Patricia grinned. "I've been coming to these for about 3 months now. Tom's really good. Doesn't talk down to you, doesn't try to sell you anything." A man in his mid-40s walked to the front of the room, Asian American, dressed casually in jeans and a button-down shirt, with an easy smile that immediately put Sarah at ease. "Good morning, everyone. I'm Tom Chen, and I'm here to tell you that building wealth on a working-class income isn't just possible. It's happening right here in Jackson, right now, with folks just like you." For the next 90 minutes, Sarah's mind expanded in ways she didn't know were possible. Tom talked about the difference between earned income and passive income. He explained how wealthy people paid less in taxes because they made money from investments, not wages. He broke down basic concepts like cash flow, equity, and appreciation in language that actually made sense. "The system isn't designed for working people to get ahead," Tom said, and Sarah felt Patricia nod beside her. "But that doesn't mean you can't learn the system and use it to your advantage. You just have to think differently." He projected a slide on the screen. "Your home, liability, or asset?" Sarah leaned forward. "Most people think their house is an asset because it has value," Tom continued. "But if it's taking money out of your pocket every month and not putting any money back in, it's actually a liability. The good news? You can change that." He talked about house hacking, renting out rooms or converting garages into rental units. He mentioned a nurse from Brandon who'd started with 1 rental room and now owned 3 rental properties. He showed real numbers, real people, real results. Sarah pulled out her phone and started taking notes, her fingers flying across the screen. After the workshop ended, people clustered around Tom, asking questions. Sarah hung back, suddenly shy. What would she even say? That she was drowning and desperate and willing to try anything? "You going to talk to him?" Patricia asked. "I don't know, maybe." "Girl, go. That's why he's here." "I chickened out my first time too, and I regretted it for 2 weeks until the next workshop." Sarah took a deep breath and joined the small crowd. When it was finally her turn, she felt her carefully prepared questions evaporate. "I'm Sarah Bennett. Walter Hayes told me to mention his name." Tom's face lit up. "Walter, how's that old troublemaker doing? I heard he was in the hospital." "He's recovering well, getting discharged soon." "That's good to hear. Walter was actually one of my first mentors when I moved to Jackson." "What can I help you with, Sarah?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "I'm 44, drowning in mortgage payments, working double shifts just to stay afloat, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Walter said there's another way, but I don't have money to invest or time to learn complicated systems, and I'm so tired I can barely think straight." Tom's expression shifted to something gentle and understanding. "How many extra bedrooms do you have?" "1. That's where you start. An hour later, Sarah sat in Cup's coffee shop across the street with Patricia, both of them nursing lattes they probably shouldn't have spent money on but needed anyway. "So you're really going to do it?" Patricia asked. "Rent out a room?" Tom made it sound so simple. Post an ad, screen tenants, sign a lease. But the reality... Sarah stirred her coffee nervously. "Having a stranger in my house, what if they're crazy? What if they trash the place? What if they pay you $600 a month and you can finally sleep at night?" Sarah had to admit, that part sounded pretty good. "Tom gave me the name of a property management group that handles screening for a small fee," Sarah said, "and he recommended I join this local real estate investing group that meets monthly. Said they're good people, not sharks." "Look at you networking." Patricia raised her cup in a mock toast. "Next thing you know, you'll be one of those real estate moguls on TV." "Right. Me and my one rental room." But they both laughed, and Sarah realized it was the first time in months she'd laughed about her financial situation instead of crying about it. That afternoon, Sarah stood in Riley's old bedroom, really looking at it for the first time in years. The walls were still painted the lavender Riley had insisted on at age 14. Posters of bands Sarah had never heard of still hung crookedly on the walls. Boxes of old clothes and textbooks were stacked in the corner. It could work. With some cleaning, fresh paint, maybe some furniture from Goodwill, it could actually work. Sarah pulled out her phone and called Riley. "Hey, Mum, what's up?" "Hi, sweetheart, quick question. You still have stuff in your old room you want to keep?" I don't think so." "Why?" Sarah took a breath. "I'm thinking about renting it out, to help with bills." There was a pause on the other end. "Like a roommate?" "Sort of, a tenant." "Mom, is money that tight?" Sarah heard the worry in her daughter's voice and hated it. "We're okay, baby. I just went to this financial workshop today, and I'm learning some new ways to manage things. This is actually a smart move, not a desperate one." That was only partly true, but Riley didn't need to carry her mother's anxiety. "Well, if you need help cleaning it out, I can come home next weekend. Are you sure about this, though? I mean, a stranger in the house." "I'm not sure about anything," Sarah admitted, "but I'm tired of being scared all the time. I have to try something different." After they hung up, Sarah started pulling boxes out of the closet. Years of accumulated life. Old report cards, prom dresses, stuffed animals, textbooks from nursing school. Each box was a memory, a piece of time she couldn't get back. At the bottom of the closet, she found a photo album from her wedding. Sarah and David, young and stupid and convinced love was enough. She flipped through the pages, barely recognizing the 22-year-old girl in the white dress. That girl had thought working hard was the answer to everything. She'd believed that if you just showed up and did your job and were responsible, life would reward you. Sarah closed the album and put it in the donation pile. Some lessons came harder than others. Sunday morning, Sarah did something she never did. She skipped church and spent 3 hours deep cleaning Riley's room instead. She scrubbed baseboards, washed windows, and pulled down the old posters. With each task, the room transformed from a teenage time capsule into something that could actually be advertised. The physical work felt good. It was concrete, measurable progress, unlike the endless wheel of working and worrying she'd been stuck on. Her phone rang around noon. It was her mother. "Sarah Elizabeth, where were you this morning? I called the house in your cell." "Hey, Mama, I was cleaning." "Cleaning? On the Lord's Day?" "I'm renting out Riley's room. Trying to, anyway. I went to this financial workshop yesterday and—" "Renting to who? Some stranger off the street? Baby, that's dangerous." Sarah sat down on the floor of Riley's half-cleaned room, suddenly exhausted. "Mama, I'm working 70 hours a week and still can't make ends meet. Something has to change." "I know, baby, I know. I just worry. Your Daddy worked himself to death, Mama, and we still ended up broke. I'm not doing that. I'm going to work smarter, like someone told me, even if it scares me." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Well," her mother finally said, voice softer, "you always were stubborn. If you're going to do this, at least be careful. Check references. Get everything in writing." "Tom Chen, he's the financial advisor who runs the workshop. He gave me a whole list of things to do, background checks, rental agreements, everything." "Tom Chen? Is he that nice Chinese man who helped Bernice's daughter with her taxes?" I don't know, Mama. Maybe. Bernice said he's good people, volunteers all over the place. If he's helping you, that's a good sign. After they hung up, Sarah looked around the half-cleaned room and felt something shift inside her chest. It wasn't confidence exactly, more like determination. The stubborn kind that had gotten her through nursing school while raising a baby, the kind that had kept her standing after David left. She pulled out her phone and started drafting an ad for the room. Private bedroom and bathroom in quiet Ridgewood neighborhood, she typed. Professional or graduate student preferred. $600 monthly, utilities included. Her finger hovered over the post button for a long moment. Then she pressed it. The responses came faster than Sarah expected. By Monday evening, she had 17 inquiries about the room, 17 strangers who wanted to live in her house, sleep in Riley's old bedroom, share her kitchen and bathroom. Sarah sat at her kitchen table after her shift, scrolling through messages on her laptop. Some were clearly copy-paste jobs sent to dozens of listings. Others were more personal, almost desperate. Stories of divorces, job relocations, students stretching tight budgets. One message caught her attention. Hi, I'm Jennifer Morales, 26, graduate student at Mississippi College studying social work. I'm currently living in Clinton but need to relocate closer to my field placement at UMMC. I'm quiet, clean, and responsible. I can provide references from previous landlords and professors. Would love to chat if the room is still available. Sarah read it 3 times. UMMC, that was her hospital. A graduate student sounded responsible. 26 was young but old enough to be serious about life. She typed back before she could overthink it. Hi Jennifer, the room is still available. Would you like to come see it this week? The response came within 10 minutes. They scheduled a viewing for Wednesday evening. Sarah spent the next 2 days in a frenzy of preparation. She painted Riley's room a neutral beige. Goodbye lavender, hello landlord approved. She bought a cheap bed frame and mattress from the clearance section at Mattress Firm, a desk and chair from Goodwill, a lamp from Target. Every purchase made her bank account scream, but Tom Chen's words echoed in her head. You have to spend a little money to make money. The room looked not bad, actually. Basic, but clean and functional, like a decent hotel room if Sarah squinted. Wednesday arrived. Sarah left work at 5, rushed home, and spent 30 minutes making the house look presentable. She hid the stack of medical bills, wiped down the kitchen counters, and tried not to look as nervous as she felt. Jennifer Morales arrived at exactly 6 o'clock. Punctual, that was a good sign. She was petite, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing scrubs under her jacket. She had an earnest, open face that immediately reminded Sarah of Riley. Miss Bennett, I'm Jennifer. She extended her hand professionally. Please call me Sarah, come in. Sarah gave her the tour, trying to see her house through a stranger's eyes. The living room with its worn furniture, the kitchen with the old appliances that still worked but definitely showed their age, the shared bathroom that suddenly seemed very small. This is the bedroom, Sarah said, opening the door to Riley's transformed room. Jennifer stepped inside, looking around carefully. It's perfect. Exactly what I need. Close to the hospital, quiet neighborhood. How long have you lived here? 12 years, raised my daughter here, she's at Ole Miss now. Must be weird, renting out her room. Sarah appreciated the honesty. It is, but she doesn't live here anymore, and I could use the help with the mortgage. Jennifer nodded, no judgment in her eyes. I get it. My mom had to take in boarders after my dad died. It was hard at first, but it saved our house. They talked for another 20 minutes. Jennifer explained her program, her field placement hours, her study schedule. She was organized, polite, and seemed genuinely responsible. She offered references without being asked. I'd like to apply, Jennifer said finally, if you're willing to consider me. Sarah thought about Tom Chen's advice, trust your gut but verify everything. I'll need to run a background check and contact your references, and I'll need first month's rent plus a security deposit before you move in. Of course. I expected that. Jennifer pulled out her phone. I can send you my references right now and I have the deposit ready. When could I move in? If everything checks out, end of next week? Perfect. After Jennifer left, Sarah sat on her couch, heart pounding. Was she really doing this? letting a stranger into her home for $600 a month. But $600 meant she could cut back to regular 40-hour weeks instead of 70. $600 meant she could start rebuilding her savings. $600 meant breathing room. She called Patricia, her new friend from the workshop. "I think I found a tenant," Sarah said when Patricia answered. "Already? That was fast. Tell me everything." Sarah described Jennifer the conversation, the nervous excitement churning in her stomach. "She sounds great," Patricia said. "But did you run the background check yet?" "Not yet. Tom gave me the name of a service to use. I'll do it tomorrow." "Good. Also, did you write up a lease?" Sarah's stomach dropped. "A what?" "A rental agreement. You need everything in writing, Sarah. Move-in date, rent amount, house rules, everything." "I don't know how to write a lease." "Tom has templates. I'll text you his number. Call him tomorrow. He'll walk you through it." After they hung up, Sarah realized how much she didn't know. It was overwhelming and terrifying, but also oddly exciting. She was learning, actually doing something instead of just surviving. Thursday morning, Sarah called Tom Chen between shifts. "Sarah, how's the room rental going?" "I think I found a tenant, but Patricia said I need a lease, and I have no idea what I'm doing." Tom laughed, kind and patient. "Don't worry, I've got you covered. I'll email you a standard Mississippi rental agreement template. You'll fill in the blanks with your specific terms. It's simpler than it sounds." "What if I mess it up?" "Then you'll learn and do better next time. That's how this works. Nobody gets it perfect right out of the gate." "I'm terrified." "Good. That means you're taking it seriously. Terror is healthy. Paralysis is the problem. You're moving forward. That's what matters." The email arrived an hour later. Sarah printed the lease agreement during her lunch break, reading through it carefully. Most of it was standard legal language, but some sections required decisions. Rent due date, late fees, notice period for ending the lease, house rules. House rules. Sarah hadn't even thought about that. No smoking, obviously. Quiet hours, shared kitchen etiquette, overnight guests. She felt like she was making up adulthood as she went along. That evening, she called the background check service Tom recommended. It would cost $40, money she didn't really have to spare. But Tom had been firm. Never skip the screening. Never. The woman on the phone was efficient and professional. "We'll have the results within 48 hours. Credit check, criminal background, and eviction history." Eviction history? She's 26. Would she even have that? "You'd be surprised what people don't tell you, honey. Better to know now than after she's moved in." Sarah gave Jennifer's information and hung up, feeling both responsible and slightly paranoid. Was this what being a landlord felt like? Constant low-grade anxiety about other people's choices. Friday night, Sarah attended her first real estate investing group meeting. It was held in a conference room at a Fairview Inn on North State Street, and Sarah almost turned around 3 times before actually walking inside. The room was full of people, maybe 30 of them, ranging from 20-somethings in startup hoodies to retirees in khakis. Some looked wealthy. Others looked as working class as Sarah felt. "First-timer?" asked a man about her age, extending his hand. "I'm Robert Williams, been coming to these for about a year." "Sarah Bennett, I'm very new to all this." "Aren't we all? That's the point." Robert had an easy smile and wore a Jackson State University shirt. "What brings you here?" "I'm renting out a room in my house, trying to anyway. Still waiting on the background check." "Hey, that's great. House hacking is a smart first step. I started the same way 3 years ago. Now I've got 2 rental properties." "2? How did you afford that?" "Saved the rental income from my first room, lived cheap for a year, then used that as a down payment on a small duplex in South Jackson. Live in one side, rent out the other. Now both properties pay for themselves and I'm banking the extra." Sarah stared at him. "You make it sound so simple." "It's not simple. It's hard as hell, and I made about 100 mistakes along the way. But it's possible. That's the thing nobody tells working folks. It's actually possible." The meeting started. The speaker was a woman named Diane Johnson, who owned 12 rental properties across Jackson. She was African American, probably in her 50s, and had the no-nonsense energy of someone who'd fought for everything she had. "I started with nothing," Diane said. "Single mother, working 2 jobs, living paycheck to paycheck. Sound familiar? Heads nodded all around the room, including Sarah's. I bought my first rental property at 42 years old, a little shotgun house in West Jackson for $30,000. Took every penny I had. I fixed it up myself, YouTube videos and determination, and rented it out for $600 a month. Sarah leaned forward, captivated. That $600 changed my life. Not overnight, not magically, but slowly, surely, it gave me options I'd never had. I saved that rental income for 2 years and bought another property, then another. Now I work part-time at my day job by choice, not because I have to. After her talk, Diane took questions. Sarah's hand went up before she could stop herself. Yes, in the back? I'm about to rent out a room for the first time and I'm terrified. What if it goes wrong? What if I can't handle being a landlord? Diane smiled, and it was the smile of someone who'd been there. It probably will go wrong at some point. You'll get a bad tenant eventually, or something will break and cost money you don't have. But here's the secret. You handle it, because you have to. And each time you handle it, you get a little stronger and a little smarter. That's not very reassuring, Sarah said, and the room laughed. No, it's not. But it's true. And the alternative, working yourself to death and hoping things magically improve, that's not a plan, that's just slowly drowning. Sarah felt those words land in her chest like stones in deep water. After the meeting, several people approached her with advice, phone numbers, recommendations. Patricia showed up. Sarah hadn't even known she'd be there, and introduced her to more people who'd started exactly where Sarah was now. See? Patricia said as they walked to their cars afterward. You're not alone in this. I feel like I'm jumping off a cliff. You are, but there's a whole bunch of us down here who jumped before you and we're still alive. Some of us are even thriving. Saturday morning, the background check results arrived in Sarah's email. She opened them with her heart hammering, half expecting some terrible revelation. But Jennifer Morales checked out perfectly. No criminal record, no evictions, decent credit score for someone her age. Her references, 2 former landlords and a professor, all gave glowing recommendations. Sarah sat at her kitchen table staring at her laptop screen. This was really happening. She was really going to do this. She called Jennifer. Hi, this is Sarah Bennett. I wanted to let you know you passed the background check. The room is yours if you still want it. The excitement in Jennifer's voice was palpable. Really? Oh my gosh, yes. When can I move in? How about next Saturday? That gives you a week to pack and me a week to prepare. Perfect. I'll have the deposit and first month's rent ready when I arrive. After they hung up, Sarah sat in the quiet kitchen, feeling something she hadn't felt in a very long time. It might have been pride. Moving day arrived with unseasonably warm weather, the kind of Indian summer Mississippi specialized in. Sarah had spent the entire previous evening deep cleaning the house, changing the sheets on the guest bed 3 times, and rearranging the refrigerator to make space for Jennifer's food. At 10 in the morning, a small U-Haul van pulled up in front of the house. Sarah watched from the window as Jennifer climbed out, followed by 2 young women who must have been friends helping with the move. Sarah opened the door before they could knock. Good morning, let me help. Morning, these are my friends Kayla and Destiny. We promise not to take long. The 3 young women worked with impressive efficiency, carrying boxes and furniture up the walkway. Sarah tried to help, but mostly just held doors and tried not to hover nervously. Within an hour, Jennifer's entire life was stacked in Riley's old room. The friends left with hugs and promises to visit soon. Then it was just Sarah and Jennifer, standing awkwardly in the hallway between their separate spaces. So, Jennifer said, I guess we're roommates now? I guess we are. Sarah managed to smile. I made coffee if you want some, after you settle in. That sounds perfect. Sarah retreated to the kitchen, giving Jennifer space to unpack. This was so strange. Another person living in her house. Someone else's coffee mug in the cabinet. Someone else's shampoo in the shower. Someone else's rhythm intersecting with her own. An hour later, Jennifer emerged looking slightly less overwhelmed. They sat at the kitchen table with coffee, navigating the delicate dance of establishing boundaries. So I'm usually at the hospital or library most days, Jennifer said. Early mornings and late evenings. I'll try to be quiet. I work night shifts a lot, so same. We'll probably barely see each other. That's kind of perfect, actually. Jennifer laughed. No offense. None taken. I'm not really a hang out with my roommate person anyway. They covered the basics. Kitchen sharing, bathroom schedules, quiet hours. Jennifer handed over an envelope with $1,200 in cash and a money order. First month's rent and security deposit. Sarah held the envelope, feeling its weight. $1,200 in her hand. Money that didn't come from destroying her body with extra shifts. Thank you, she said, and meant it more deeply than Jennifer could possibly know. After Jennifer went back to unpacking, Sarah sat alone in the kitchen and opened her banking app. She deposited the money order and tucked the cash in her wallet. Her checking account balance jumped from $643 to $1,843. It wasn't life-changing money, but it was breathing room. It was possibility. Sarah allowed herself a moment to just sit with that feeling. The first week with Jennifer was an adjustment. Sarah had lived alone for 2 years since Riley left for college, and she'd forgotten how to share space. Every sound made her hyper-aware: footsteps in the hallway, water running, the refrigerator opening. But Jennifer was respectful almost to a fault. She was quiet, clean, and seemed to spend most of her time either at the hospital or studying in her room. By the end of the week, Sarah had to admit it wasn't nearly as bad as she'd feared. The real test came when Sarah's first mortgage payment was due after Jennifer moved in. Sarah pulled up her bank account, did the math, and realized she could make the full payment and still have over $1,000 left. For the first time in 18 months, she wasn't going to overdraw her account. Sarah actually cried a little, just sat at her kitchen table at 2 in the morning after a shift and let the relief wash over her. Her phone buzzed. It was Patricia. "How's it going with the tenant?" "Good," Sarah typed back. "Really good, actually. I just made my mortgage payment without panicking." "See, I told you, you're a landlord now, one of us." Sarah smiled at her phone. One rental room didn't exactly make her a real estate mogul, but it was something. It was a start. 2 weeks after Jennifer moved in, Sarah attended her second real estate investing meeting. This time she felt less like an imposter and more like someone who was actually doing the thing, even if it was just in the smallest way possible. Robert Williams spotted her across the room and waved her over. "Sarah, how'd the tenant situation work out?" "She moved in 2 weeks ago. So far, so good." "That's great. So, what's your next move?" Sarah blinked. "Next move?" "Yeah. You've got rental income now. What are you going to do with it?" "I hadn't really thought that far ahead. Pay bills, I guess?" Robert shook his head, smiling. "That's what you do with your nursing income. The rental income is different. That's seed money. You save it, invest it, use it to grow. I barely have enough to cover my regular bills as it is. I get it. But here's the thing. If you spend that rental income on everyday expenses, you'll never get ahead. You'll just tread water a little higher. But if you can find a way to save even half of it, bank $300 a month, you'll have $3,600 in a year. That's a down payment on something bigger." Sarah felt a familiar flutter of anxiety mixed with possibility. Bigger like what? Like a small rental property, a duplex in a working-class neighborhood, something you can manage while still working your day job. "I don't have time to manage a rental property. I barely have time to breathe. Not now maybe, but what if you did? What if you replaced 1 night shift a week with rental income instead? Eventually 2 shifts, then 3. That's the path, Sarah. Small steps, but always moving forward." The meeting started before Sarah could respond, but Robert's words stayed with her through the entire presentation. The speaker that night was a man named James Cooper, who'd started with a single rental house and now owned a small apartment complex. "The first one is the hardest," James said, "because you don't know what you're doing and you're scared and everything feels impossible. But that first property teaches you everything you need to know. It's your real education." During the Q&A session, someone asked how to find good deals in Jackson's current market. "Drive around," James said. "Look for properties that are outdated but structurally sound. Places that need cosmetic work but not foundation repair. Talk to other investors. Sometimes the best deals never hit the market, they're word of mouth." Sarah thought about the neighborhoods around her hospital, the working-class areas with houses from the 60s and 70s, Places that could use some love but had good bones. Places like where she grew up. After the meeting, she approached James during the social hour. "Excuse me, Mr. Cooper." "Just James, please." "And you are?" "Sarah Bennett. I just started renting out a room in my house, and I'm trying to figure out what comes next." James's face lit up with genuine warmth. "The first step is always the hardest. Congratulations. What kind of nursing do you do?" "ICU at UMMC. How did you know I was a nurse?" "I heard you talking to Robert earlier. My wife's a nurse too, labor and delivery at St. Dominic. She actually got me into real estate. We were drowning financially, working opposite shifts so one of us could always be with the kids. She started researching passive income and convinced me to buy our first rental." "And it worked?" "Eventually, not overnight. We made mistakes, lost money on our first property, almost gave up, but we stuck with it. Now she works 3 days a week instead of 5, and we actually see each other." Sarah felt something crack open in her chest. "That's what I want. Just less. Less exhaustion, less fear, less constantly scrambling." James nodded with understanding. "Then you're in the right place. Keep coming to these meetings, keep learning. And when you're ready to look at your first property, let me know. I'll come with you, help you see what I see." "Really? You'd do that?" "That's how this works. Somebody helped me when I was starting out. Now I help others. Pay it forward." That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. Not from anxiety for once, but from possibility. She lay in bed listening to the quiet house, thinking about Robert's words and James's story. She pulled out her phone and opened a calculator app. If she saved $300 a month from Jennifer's rent, she'd have $3,600 in a year. Add her tax refund, maybe cut some expenses, she might get to $5,000. Not enough to buy a house outright, but maybe enough for a down payment on a small rental property if she could get an FHA loan. Sarah opened Google and typed FHA loans for investment properties, Mississippi. The results weren't encouraging. FHA loans required you to live in the property, but there was something called a multifamily property. If she bought a duplex and lived in one side while renting out the other, that would qualify. She spent 2 hours falling down a rabbit hole of real estate websites, rental calculators, and YouTube videos. At 3 in the morning, she finally forced herself to put the phone down, but her mind kept racing. What if this actually worked? What if she could build something real, something that gave her options instead of just obligations? The next morning, exhausted but energized, Sarah made a decision. She opened a separate savings account on her phone, something she'd never had before, and transferred $300 from her checking account. It hurt to see that money leave. $300 was groceries, gas, the buffer that kept her from overdrawing. But it was also the first brick in a foundation she was building towards something different. She labeled the account Future Freedom and stared at the balance. $300. It wasn't much, but it was more than she'd had yesterday. At work that night, Marcus noticed something different about her. "You're smiling, that's weird." "I'm allowed to smile." "Not at the start of a night shift, you're not. What's going on? Lottery ticket finally pay off?" Sarah laughed. "Nothing that dramatic. I'm trying something new, financially." "The room rental thing?" "That's part of it. But I went to another real estate meeting, and I'm starting to see how this could actually work. Like, really work." Marcus leaned against the nurse's station, curious. "So you're going to become a real estate mogul now? Nurses by night, landlord by day?" "Something like that. Maybe. I don't know yet." "Well, whatever you're doing, it looks good on you. You seem less—" He searched for the right word. "Less like you're drowning." "I was drowning, I still kind of am, but maybe I'm learning how to swim." The shift was busy. Chest pain in bed 3, post-op complications in bed 7, a trauma coming up from the ER. But Sarah moved through it with something she hadn't had in months, energy that came from hope instead of desperation. During her break at 3 in the morning, she checked her phone. Jennifer had texted, "Left you some homemade banana bread on the counter. Thanks for being a great landlord." Sarah smiled at the message. Landlord. She was a landlord. It still felt surreal. She thought about Walter Hayes, probably home in Hattiesburg now, recovered from his pneumonia. She should call him, thank him for asking that question that had changed everything. Or maybe she'd wait until she had something bigger to report, until she'd turned that first tentative step into something more substantial. Sarah looked at her future freedom savings account one more time. $300. It would be $600 next month. $900 the month after that. Small steps, but always forward. For the first time in years, she could see a path that didn't end with her collapsing from exhaustion at 60, broken like her father. It was a different path, a harder path in some ways, requiring learning and risk and pushing past fear. But it was her path, and she was walking it. 6 months passed like water through a sieve, quickly, but leaving something behind with each drop. Sarah's life had developed a rhythm she never thought possible. Jennifer proved to be the perfect tenant, quiet, responsible, and remarkably low maintenance. The rent came on the first of every month like clockwork, deposited directly into Sarah's future freedom account. By March, Sarah had saved $2,100. It wasn't the full $1,800 she'd hoped for. There'd been an emergency root canal and a car repair she couldn't avoid. But it was more money than she'd ever managed to save in her adult life. More importantly, something had shifted inside her. She'd cut back to 50 hours a week instead of 70, and the world hadn't ended. Her mortgage got paid. The lights stayed on. She even had money left over. Sarah attended every real estate investing meeting, took notes like she was back in nursing school, and slowly built a network of people who were doing what she wanted to do. Patricia became her closest confidant in this new world. Robert checked in regularly, always encouraging. James Cooper had even taken her to look at a few properties, teaching her what to look for. But looking and buying were two very different things. "You're overthinking it," Patricia said one evening in April. They were sitting at Babalu Tacos and Tapas in Fondren after another real estate meeting, splitting an order of guacamole neither of them could really afford. "I'm being cautious," Sarah countered. "That's different." "No, you're scared." "Which I get. But you've got almost $3,000 saved now. You're pre-approved for an FHA loan. James has shown you 3 duplexes that would work. What are you waiting for?" Sarah pushed a chip through the guacamole, not really hungry. "What if I fail? What if I buy something and can't rent it out? What if something major breaks and I can't afford to fix it?" "Then you'll handle it, just like you handled getting divorced, just like you handled raising Riley alone, just like you handled every other hard thing life has thrown at you." Patricia's voice was firm but kind. "You're not going to fail, Sarah. But even if you did, you'd survive. You always have." The words settled over Sarah like a blanket. Patricia was right. She'd survived worse than a bad real estate investment. "There's one property," Sarah admitted. "The duplex on Morningside Street that James showed me last week. I can't stop thinking about it." "The one in Belhaven? With the good bones but ugly wallpaper?" "That's the one. It's $59,000 for both units. I could put down $5,000 with an FHA loan, live in one side, rent out the other. The numbers actually work." "So what's stopping you?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Once I do this, there's no going back. I'll be a real landlord, with real responsibilities. What if I'm not good enough?" Patricia reached across the table and squeezed Sarah's hand. "Girl, you're an ICU nurse. You keep people alive during the worst moments of their lives. You can definitely handle being a landlord." The next morning, Sarah called James Cooper. "I want to make an offer on the Morningside duplex." There was a pause, then James's warm laugh. "About time. I was starting to think you were going to let someone else grab it. I'm terrified." "Good, that means you're taking it seriously. Let's write up that offer." The process was more complicated than Sarah expected. Inspections, negotiations, paperwork that made her head spin. She had to provide tax returns, bank statements, employment verification. The seller countered her initial offer, and Sarah had to decide if the extra $2,000 was worth it. "Think long-term," Tom Chen advised when she called him in a panic. "An extra $2,000 sounds like a lot right now, but spread over 30 years, it's nothing." Sarah agreed to the counteroffer at $61,000. Her stomach churned as she signed the paperwork. The closing was scheduled for May 15th. Sarah could barely sleep the week before, her mind spinning through every possible disaster. What if the inspection found something terrible? What if her loan didn't go through? What if she was making the biggest mistake of her life? Riley called the night before closing. "Mum, I heard you're buying a duplex tomorrow. That's huge." "I'm losing my mind, sweetheart. What am I doing?" "You're being brave. You're building something. I'm proud of you." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm so scared." "You should be. This is scary. But you're doing it anyway, and that's what makes it brave." After they hung up, Sarah pulled out the photo album she'd found in Riley's closet 6 months ago. The wedding photos, the young girl in white who thought hard work was enough. That girl had been wrong about a lot of things, but she'd been brave too in her own way. She'd survived. She'd learned. She'd grown. Sarah was still that girl, just older, wiser, and finally learning to work smarter instead of just harder. May 15th dawned clear and warm. Sarah sat in a title company office on North State Street, surrounded by more paperwork than she'd seen outside of hospital charting. The seller, an elderly man named George Pritchard, sat across from her with his attorney. "You're going to love that place," George said kindly. "My wife and I lived there for 40 years, raised 3 kids in the left unit." Sarah's hand trembled as she signed document after document. Purchase agreement, loan papers, insurance forms. Her entire financial life laid bare on paper for strangers to see. The title officer, a brisk woman named Carolyn, walked her through each signature. And here, and here, and initial here. Then, suddenly, it was done. Carolyn handed Sarah a thick envelope. "Congratulations, Miss Bennett. You're now the proud owner of 847 Morningside Street." Sarah stared at the envelope, at the keys inside, at the deed with her name printed in official letters. Sarah Bennett, owner. She walked out of that office in a daze. She sat in her Honda Civic, check engine light still on, but who cared, and just breathed. She'd done it. At 44 years old, working as an ICU nurse, she'd bought an investment property. Sarah drove straight to the duplex. It looked exactly as it had during viewings. A solid brick building from the 1960s, definitely dated, definitely in need of cosmetic work, but structurally sound. The left unit, where she'd live, had 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The right unit was identical. She unlocked the door to what would be her new home. The wallpaper was indeed hideous, a floral pattern that had to be from 1987. The carpet was worn. The kitchen appliances were harvest gold relics. But it was hers, and the numbers worked. Sarah pulled out her phone and did the math she'd done 100 times already. Mortgage payment, $425 monthly. If she rented out the right unit for $650, that left her $225 ahead every month. Plus, she'd still have Jennifer's $600 from the Ridgewood house. She'd essentially just reduced her housing costs from $2,300 a month to 0. In fact, she'd be making money. Sarah sat down on the floor of the empty living room and cried. Not from fear this time, from relief, from disbelief, from the overwhelming realization that maybe, just maybe, she was going to be okay. Her phone rang. It was Marcus. "So, did you do it?" "I did it. I bought a duplex. I'm sitting in it right now." "Sarah Bennett, real estate investor. I never thought I'd see the day. You celebrating?" "I'm sitting on a dirty floor crying, so yes, I guess that's my version of celebrating." Marcus laughed. "That sounds about right. I'm proud of you, you know. You could have just kept grinding away at double shifts, but you chose to try something different." After they hung up, Sarah called her mother. "Mama, I bought a duplex." There was a long pause. "You what?" "I bought a rental property. I'm going to live in one side and rent out the other. It's going to cut my housing costs almost completely." "Sarah Elizabeth," her mother's voice wavered, "your daddy would be so proud. Not because of the house, but because you figured out what he never did. That working hard isn't enough. You have to work smart too. I learned from his mistakes, Mama." "We all did, baby. We all did." The next 3 months were a blur of renovation, rental ads, and tenant screening. Sarah moved out of the Ridgewood house and into the left unit of the Morningside duplex. Jennifer stayed on as her tenant in Ridgewood, continuing to pay $600 monthly. Sarah spent weekends tearing down wallpaper and painting walls. She learned how to replace light fixtures from YouTube videos. She made friends with the folks at Lowe's who recognized her as the nurse who's fixing up that duplex in Belhaven. She made mistakes. She bought the wrong kind of paint for the bathroom. She accidentally cracked a tile trying to remove it. She underestimated how much work just cosmetic updates would actually require. But she persevered. By August, the right unit was ready to rent. Sarah posted an ad, screened applicants using the system she'd learned with Jennifer, and found a perfect tenant, a teacher named Michael Rodriguez who taught at a nearby elementary school. $650 a month, Michael asked during the viewing. That's incredibly reasonable for Belhaven. I'm not trying to get rich, Sarah said. I'm trying to build something sustainable. Michael moved in September 1st. His rent, plus Jennifer's from Ridgewood, gave Sarah $1,250 in rental income monthly. Combined with her nursing salary, which she'd further reduced to 45 hours a week, Sarah was finally comfortable. Not rich, not even close, but comfortable. She could pay her bills without panic. She could save money each month. She could take Riley out to dinner when she came home from Oxford, without checking her bank account first. October rolled around again, marking 1 year since that night shift when Walter Hayes had asked his simple question, "Why are you working yourself to death when you could be working smarter?" Sarah attended the real estate investing meeting on a Tuesday evening. The room was packed, as always. She saw Patricia across the room and waved. Robert gave her a thumbs up. James was talking to some new investors, probably offering the same guidance he'd given her. Tom Chen was the speaker that night. When he spotted Sarah in the crowd, he smiled and gave a small nod of recognition. "Tonight I want to talk about something important," Tom began. "The difference between working hard and working smart, because our culture loves the idea of hard work. Grind culture, hustle, but nobody talks about the people who work themselves into the ground and still end up broke." Sarah felt every word land like it was meant specifically for her. "About a year ago," Tom continued, "a nurse came to one of my workshops at the library. She was working 70 hours a week, barely making her mortgage, exhausted and terrified. She asked me if there was another way." Sarah's breath caught. He was talking about her. "I'm happy to report that she's here tonight, and she's not working 70 hours anymore. She's working 45. She owns 2 rental units. She's sleeping through the night. She's building wealth instead of just surviving." Tom looked directly at Sarah. "Would you mind standing up, Sarah?" Every head in the room turned. Sarah felt her face flush, but she stood. "Tell them what you learned this year," Tom said gently. Sarah's voice came out smaller than she intended. "I learned that I was drowning because I was doing what I'd always been taught. Work hard, keep your head down, hope for the best. But that wasn't a plan. It was just waiting to fail." She cleared her throat, gaining confidence. "I learned that hard work isn't enough. You have to be strategic. You have to learn how money actually works. And you have to be willing to try something new, even when it scares you to death." "What would you say to someone who's where you were a year ago?" Tom asked. Sarah thought about that exhausted woman collapsing into a desk chair at 3 in the morning, drinking cold coffee, staring at an overdrawn bank account. "I'd say start. Just start. It doesn't have to be perfect. It probably won't be. But start somewhere. Rent out a room, take a class, read a book, something. Because staying stuck is worse than making mistakes." The room erupted in applause. Sarah sat down quickly, embarrassed but also proud. After the meeting, people approached her with questions. How did she find her first tenant? What were the hardest parts? Did she ever want to give up? "Every day at first," Sarah admitted to a young woman about Riley's age. "But I was more scared of staying where I was than I was of trying something new." Late that night, Sarah sat on the porch of her Morningside duplex, drinking tea and watching the quiet neighborhood. Her neighborhood now. Her investment. Her future. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Sarah, this is Walter Hayes. Tom Chen gave me your number. I heard about your duplex. Congratulations, I knew you'd figure it out. Proud of you. WHH." Sarah smiled at the screen, feeling warmth spread through her chest. She typed back, "Thank you for asking the right question at the right time. Changed my life." Say. She thought about her father, dead at 62 from a heart attack brought on by decades of stress and overwork. She thought about her mother, living on Social Security in a tiny apartment. She thought about the path she'd been on, working herself to death just like her dad, with nothing to show for it except exhaustion and debt. Then she thought about where she was now. 2 rental properties, reduced work hours, a savings account with actual money in it, a plan that extended beyond just surviving the next mortgage payment. She pulled out her phone and opened her Future Freedom account. The balance read $4,147. In another 6 months, she'd have enough for a down payment on another property. Maybe a small single-family home she could rent out entirely. Maybe a triplex. The possibilities were starting to multiply. Sarah was 45 now. If she played this right, by 50 she might be working part-time by choice. By 55, maybe not working at all, not rich, but free, actually free. Inside her duplex, the light was warm and welcoming. Her home, yes, but also her investment, her teacher, her proof that different choices led to different outcomes. She thought about that terrified woman a year ago, shaking hands, inserting an IV line, wondering how much longer she could keep going. That woman had been brave enough to listen when an old man asked an uncomfortable question, brave enough to try something new, brave enough to fail a little and learn a lot. Sarah stood up, stretched, and walked back inside. Tomorrow she had a shift at the hospital, just 8 hours, not 16. Then she'd come home to her duplex, maybe do some yard work, check in with her tenants. A normal life, a sustainable life. The kind of life that came from working smarter, not just harder. As she locked the door behind her, Sarah caught her reflection in the hallway mirror. She looked different than she had a year ago. Less haunted, less exhausted, less defeated. She looked like someone who'd figured something out, and she had. 2 years later, Sarah Bennett stood in front of a packed room at the Eudora Welty Library, giving her first presentation to Tom Chen's financial workshop. "My name is Sarah Bennett," she began, her voice steady and clear. 3 years ago, I was an overworked ICU nurse, 44 years old, terrified of my mortgage and working myself to death. Today, I own 4 rental properties and work 3 days a week by choice. She paused, looking at the faces in the crowd, tired, hopeful, scared, determined. She saw herself in every one of them. "I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to tell you that if I can do this, you can too. Because 3 years ago, I knew nothing about real estate, investing, or passive income. I just knew I couldn't keep going the way I was." She clicked to her first slide. "Let me show you exactly how I did it step by step. And more importantly, let me show you how you can start today right where you are with what you have." In the back of the room, Walter Hayes sat with Tom Chen, both men smiling. "She's good," Tom whispered. "She was always good," Walter replied. "She just needed someone to ask the right question." Sarah Bennett had found her answer. Now she was helping others find theirs. The cycle continued. The knowledge spread. And slowly, surely, lives changed. One brave decision at a time.